Welcome back to the Eclectic Podcast. This is volume number 3. I'm sitting here with Mr. Jonathan Crass. My name is Josh Holbrook. Once again, we like to extend an open invitation to anybody that would like to join us for a conversation. If you're listening to this right now, you probably have access to our contact information, so why don't you just get a hold of us and we'll schedule something. Alright, well, last time we left off, I think we were kind of talking about the difference between an ideal concept versus the institution, the form that it currently is. And we were kind of thinking an extension of that idea is mainstream religion, in particular mainstream Christian churches in America. Kind of the dogma that has sprung up around these types of churches and this type of religion, and comparing and contrasting that with the actual words and teachings of Jesus Christ. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I want to go ahead and give a little disclaimer. I feel like I spend half my time giving disclaimers when we're doing these podcasts, but we're not ripping on the search for God or religious people. You know, I know a lot of good religious people, but the institution of religion, I feel like, tends to be an exclusive, almost kind of club, boxing people in and keeping others out. Which, if we look at the words of Christ, all of his teachings, essentially it's about love and forgiveness and acceptance. And that's something I don't see so prevalent in a lot of mainstream religions. It's not to say all of them, but, you know, there is a danger of bunch of people getting together and starting a club almost. A great book that goes into much more detail than I could right now about this subject is Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. Probably my favorite book of all time. It was life-changing. Just read it, do yourself a favor. Awesome book.
Yeah, it's my favorite book as well, hands down.
Even if you're not religious, you know, like,
yeah.
Christ, in my opinion, I don't really categorize myself as religious so much as spiritual, but as far as human teachers over the years go, over the course of human history, I think Christ was the best metaphysical teacher, just a wise leader.
Yeah. In Sermon on the Mount, it's not a hard read. It's only, like 150 pages maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
But it's packed full of wisdom, and every paragraph of every page is so eloquently put and so concise that I think it merits a reading from anybody. But one of the, like you were saying, some of Christ's teachings of love and acceptance, it's funny to me how many ardent Christians today subscribe to the kind of pro-war philosophy. And I mean, I'm sure there's many examples I can't think of off the top of my head right now from the Bible, but I know how Jesus said, to turn the other cheek to your enemy, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how they, the people that are pro-war and pro-violence and have kind of that that hostile kind of attitude towards other people. I don't know how they reconcile that with what it says in the Bible. Like what book are they reading? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that's problematic for religions and even the great teachers who lay out the groundwork for what these great texts spring up from, the Bible, Quran, Bhagavad Gita, to name a few. Is you never know how it's going to be interpreted. People can take something and interpret it so many different ways. And I found it interesting you bring up the pro-war sect of religion. I mean, it's not just present in Christian ideologies. There's, Muslim extremists.
Oh yeah.
There's all kinds of extremists, and it gives everyone a bad name. But even on a more individualistic level, let's forget about war for a second and just take a look at the whole eye for an eye mentality. Somebody does you wrong, and maybe you don't want to resort it with violence, but you want them to pay, and what good is that really going to do? Christ said when that woman was caught prostituting and was taken out to the edge of the town to be stoned, let he who is without sin, he drew a line in the sand, says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Everybody goes and stands on the other side, and it's just Jesus there.
Yeah.
And
So
tells
profound.
her to go free.
That, I feel like that right there, just that verse, that message, that's kind of the sum of all wisdom, I think. It can be broken down just to that teaching right there.
Mm-hmm. Or like another one, a favorite passage of mine from Christ. This is when they ask him how we should live. And he says, love one another so your joy may be full. Like, we've all done wrong. We've all sinned in our lives in some way or another. Maybe you don't view it as sin, but we've done things we're not proud of, or however you want to word it. When someone does that to you, I would say taking the high road is always better. When you're in that position and you've gotten caught doing something wrong, you want them to take compassion on you and forgive you, right?
Yeah.
How can that reconcile when you want to see them suffer?
Yeah.
When they do you wrong.
It's the golden rule.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a collective consciousness there. I was about to bring up that love one another quote, because I feel that really is the core of Christ's message. And I would like to say, though, things are better now, and we have plenty to critique, but look at, throughout history, just, even in Christ's time and all the way up through the Dark Ages and the Crusades, when, in the name of Christ, leaders across Europe were gathering up armies of people to march across the continent and go down to Jerusalem and slaughter people along the way, slaughter all the Muslims, to take back the Holy Land, and rob their riches. And so there still are wars going on today like that, and Muslims think that the extremists think that they're serving Allah or whatever, and on the Christian side, on the American side, most of them are Christians. They think that they're on some holy mission, some righteous mission, and that they are the good. And it just goes to show that battles that were being fought thousands of years ago we're still fighting today, just under different guises and different forms. And it's definitely something that permeates down to an individual basis. And just when you get mad, like you were saying, anger about somebody, something you feel wronged over, and you want some sort of revenge, you want them to pay. It's the same principle, just on a smaller scale, but it's really the same energy. It's that same hostile, negative energy that is so at odds with what Jesus was came here to say, and what he preached, and what he taught. And I guess I just find it sad that the term Christian evokes such a that pro-war feeling today. Like, it's a connotation of, if you're a Christian, well, you must be some hard right-wing, militaristic individual, and that, it seems to me that that's just the polar opposite of what that term should represent.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, the American Army likes to characterize their stance as, the holy mission and stuff, and if God or Jesus were here today, they'd say shame on you, to brand a war as being what God wants is just disgusting,
It's
misleading. Yeah, it's just pure and unadulterated filth.
Yeah. It's terrible. It's funny to imagine Jesus in an army uniform on the battlefield, with his M16.
Sniping people.
Yeah.
Oh, got another one from my father.
Yeah.
Another one down.
Yeah, that's,
for the glory of God.
Yeah, send one more to hell. It's like, it's unfathomable. It's beyond reason to imagine him with a mindset like that, taking actions like that. But I guess it's the world we live in, and the teachings of Christ that are recorded in the Bible, and given that it's gone through many translations over the years, but even the translations that we have today, which with all the faults that I'm sure that they have, they're still they still carry the weight of the message. I think it's plain to see, and so I just don't agree with the way that they've been misconstrued, and this new form of religion is operating under the banner of Christendom. So I guess we can we're at a point where we can look at it objectively and say, well, what do we do as as individuals to try to change that, because it is, like we've alluded to this before, but it is one of the most touchy, emotional, like hot button issues that you could ever bring up with anybody. So it's hard to even get into that conversation before people are, they'll hate you. They'll outright hate you.
Yeah. I found the phrase you just mentioned, the new form of religion, kind of brought up something I was thinking about lately.
Yeah.
The new religion, I feel like, in Western culture, mostly, is consumerism. Seems like that is...
Yeah.
Even people, we all know people who claim to be of a certain religious ideology but are hypocrites, and, that's not to say that we're ones to judge in any way or whatever, but, even a lot of people who characterize themselves as religious are totally under the yoke of this consumerist mindset. Everything is, forced down our throats pretty much, and people spend more time thinking about what they're gonna buy and
Yeah.
It's like an idolatry of the concrete stuff. It's been exalted past
It's vaulted
contemplating
over
this stuff.
Yeah. It's almost like maybe on a census, they'll have Christianity or whatever sect they belong to listed on a census, But when in reality, their true religion is consumerism, and it's to me, I kind of think of it like the shopping mall is their church now, and they go there on Saturdays and to pay their respects. That's the Sabbath, is shopping night.
Yeah.
And they're going in and buying all of their material goods to and again, yeah, I'm not anybody to judge other people, because to one extent or another, we all take part in this kind of phenomenon today. But
yeah,
it's funny that it's almost like they're praying somehow when they go in large groups to the mall or to wherever it is, to the car lot, whatever it is, whatever they're buying, whatever they have their eye on, that they think is going to bring them happiness. Maybe they'll get that rush, and it temporarily provides this veneer of happiness. And that's a really great analogy, because it really is like a religion.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm preaching or that I'm condemning anyone or that I'm judging, because I play into it. I'm a wage slave. I'm sitting here in my designer clothes and smartphone in my pocket, fixing to go to work in a couple hours. I'm part of the corporate machine.
Sure.
A very, very, very infinitesimally small cog, but a cog nonetheless.
Yeah.
We all play into it. I mean, what else can we do?
Yeah. It's I think there's a lot to be said, though, for being a cog in that wheel, and being a cog on that wheel with an understanding of the part that you play.
What it all means.
Yeah, and being able to mentally kind of partition it off in your mind and be like, all right, well, I'm doing this to serve this purpose, but this isn't going to become my identity. And it's important to see past it, even though, because pretty much, it's almost impossible to avoid playing into that whole lifestyle. But I think if you can come to it with an understanding and continue to try to evolve as a person without those constraints shaping the person that you are, I think that that's just a big difference. I think that it's one thing to do it without any sense of irony and be totally consumed by consumerism.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. It's important not to identify yourself with that. I tend to think that people applying labels to themselves, categorizing themselves in any way, is limiting to a person's individuality. I think it's important, for me anyway, for everyone who's a part of this consumerist cog in the machine, to have some sense of individuality, something that they go home to that is theirs, that their boss can't take away, some way to unwind and flush all that shit out. And for me, it's art, writing, doing music, podcasting, whatever, which kind of seems like a natural turning point into the attitude towards artistic type that seems to be prevailing in the modern consumerist West.
Yeah, it I've noticed it, and I don't know how prevalent it is across the country. I'm sure every area it's kind of different, but there's definitely a mindset in a lot of people that that to be respectable, you're to go out and I'm sure in bigger cities it's the same thing, but with like white collar jobs and finish school and become a lawyer or doctor or sit in some office building up on the 40th floor.
Yeah.
Around areas like this, though, it takes more of a form of looking down on people that aren't quote unquote hard workers.
Yeah. Manual labor,
menial job.
Mills,
logging. Woods, like this physical jobs. There's kind of people that do that all day, and I'm sure that they do work hard, but they tend to, in my experiences, look down on people that are have a little more artistic tendencies and don't want to do that with their time. They don't want to bust their back for something that they can't see any result coming from, any positive evolution as a person. To me, a lot of that seems like a waste of time to me, because I'm not going to get anything out of it. And I think there's definitely that just that general attitude that the artistic people, whatever it is that we're doing, the work that we do.
It's not real work.
Yeah, I'm saying we, but I mean just a type,
artists in general.
Yeah, just a type of person that what they do isn't as valuable as manual labor, blue collar, driving a truck type jobs, shit like that. And it's kind of sad, because I feel like those types of people might think that they're doing something better for society. But I would pose the question: how would people like it if all art was subtracted from their lives? Imagine there is no music. All right, there's no
books,
no literature,
no movies, no TV.
Yeah, and it goes on and on. No, I mean, no magazines, no really documentaries. No, there isn't that.
No talk radio.
Yeah, no talk radio. There's not that drive. There's not that curiosity in life anymore. If we do that, there's not that drive for knowledge or reflection on anything. So all life would be getting up in the morning, going to a job, working whatever it is you do, whatever part of the proverbial assembly line you're at, doing that all day, coming home and eating and sleeping. Life would just be a boring cycle of no escape from that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so repetitive, and I don't see what the higher goal would be, because their life would lose meaning, I think.
Exactly. It would reduce us essentially to drones in a hive mindset. And I just kind of thought of this analogy, but remember the book The Giver?
Yeah, I do.
Well, essentially they, live in a world where there's no color, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I would characterize the world without art to be like.
Yeah.
Just real bleak, black and white, boring, dull, dreary repetitiveness.
Yeah, a lifeless life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, doesn't that sound great?
Yeah, I mean, I've came across that attitude before, like people who, for whatever reason, whether it's to make themselves feel better about what they're doing, or maybe they just want to rip on someone, or I don't know, but people that I come across, I don't really like to identify myself with the various jobs that I've held since high school.
Yeah.
And, people ask me what I'm doing, and I tend to talk more about my hobbies and stuff. And that
your interests, your passions.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm like just a drain on society. I mean, I do have jobs more often than not, but I don't like to identify with that, and I'll tell them more like about what I do with my spare time than what I do at work every day. And it's like, oh, why don't you get a real job? And it's, yeah, like you said, how would you like it if all the artists in the world just got a real job and we didn't have any of this great entertainment stuff that we have anymore?
Yeah, isn't it funny that I'd say probably 80-90% of the people that you'll come across, the first thing they ask you when they're meeting you, or if someone you haven't seen in a long time, what are you doing now? Yeah, so how's work going? It's like that's the first thing that you have when you meet another human is the method that they pay their bills, you know? Like, it's I don't know, man. It's definitely something that I'm kind of appalled by. And, you know, looking back at all of the artists, you know, especially in the last century, all the great ones, there's always a similar story, a similar pattern that their life takes, where they were outcasts. They were outcast, and they had struggles integrating into their community, into society.
Sure.
And, you know, they stuck with their work, with what they considered to be their valuable work that they did, their art, whatever they were creating, their interests. And eventually, you know, they make it, and they garner some fame and some attention, and then you'll hear them in an interview telling everybody how, you know, they were doubted. Of course, they were doubted, and you know, I think that's just kind of a pattern that it takes right now. And one more thing I like to bring up too is that if we look back, like we're saying, let's just imagine a world where you subtract all of the art. The last time in humans, the history of humanity, that was the case, that there was no art, it was like pre-Stone Age. It was when we were on that borderline of animal, when the only thing they did, of course, was, you know, built their little shelter, went out, harvested, you know, whatever they could find, killed animals, brought them back, cooked them, ate, you know, fucked, reproduced, propagated, you know, and died. Yeah. And that was life. That's the life of an animal. And I would say that fine line that occurred when we became human and emerged out of the animal kingdom, you know, metaphorically.
It's when we started making artistic statements.
Yeah, is when we came to the point where we started to create art, when they started painting and they created language.
Started to have a commentary on what was going on.
Yeah, because that's what art is. It's reflection on life.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'll give you that. Like, that's one point I would like to stress, is that I think that art is what makes humanity humanity. And subtract all of it, and we are nothing more than animals.
And something I thought something that I thought you said was interesting, rewinding back a little bit, was about how the most artists in the past and in the present, it's a sad reality that they have struggles integrating into society, and you know, there's that trial period where they're outcasts and stuff, and some of them never break through at all. Some great art will probably never be known. Yeah. Some of them break through after they're dead. Yeah. The very lucky minority are the ones that in their lifetime see their work appreciated and stuff, and it is sad. But I also would argue that is where the great art comes from, is the conflict. Yes. And the... Sorry about that. We had a bit of a technical glitch. So I believe I was saying most artists, it's the sad reality that they don't stick around long enough to see their work appreciated, and the good art comes from that struggle. So maybe the struggle of integrating into society and being something of an outcast is something like of a necessary evil in the creation of good art, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe rough experiences in life, tragedy or whatever, just general struggling to make it, so to speak, just to get by. I think that kind of has the sometimes informs an artist and gives them that I don't know if I'd say added motivation, but certainly that can be the case too. But I think it just gives them a more well-rounded world perspective and kind of and provides them more of a relatable angle, to which they can kind of infuse that into their art, whatever it is.
Yeah, because I think if it was easy for the artists to create these masterworks of art, that the message would be kind of lost in the translation. Like you said, it gives them a little bit of a relatable angle. It's important to be able to relate to the everyman, because if you're just making artistic statements as an elitist member of society, and to the elitist members of society, it's like categorizing your work and limiting its potential to change and invoke ideas and discussion and thought.
Yeah, and like, if it was easy, like you were saying, if it was easy to make these masterworks, whether it's an album or a song that's just truly a masterpiece, or a book, or a film,
Or an image, like painting.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, you definitely don't want to leave that out. Visual art, whatever it is, if it comes really easily, then a lot more people would be able to do it, and it kind of would take away the value from it, maybe.
Yeah.
Like if there's thousands of masterpieces, so to speak, being churned out every day, then they cease to be masterpieces.
Exactly. I was just going to say that exact same thing. Some of the mystique would disappear from these great artists and these works of art. Which I feel like, actually, that's kind of interesting. If we had a first-person view into the process that a lot of these artists make their music or their movies, it's important for us to not be able to see the process, because it kind of loses some of its mystique if you can see the steps, the progression that it's taken towards being what it is known to the masses as, some masterwork. But if you see it in its infancy stage and how it's slowly built from the ground up, it kind of loses that magical kind of air about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like knowing the trick behind an illusion that you'd see like at a magic show in Las Vegas or something. If you know how they're doing it, then it's not even really fun to see anymore. And I think most art has a lot more depth than magic tricks, but it's kind of the same principle. If you know exactly how they created it and knew exactly all the emotions and everything that went into it, then it's kind of it definitely loses something. I think mystique probably is the perfect word.
I think also a lot of the artists that are real prominent, or worth their salt, so to speak, don't care about their level of fame or any of that. They do it because something inside of them or something they see in the world drives them to do their art.
I think almost without exception, all the real great artists are that way. And I think you can flip that and look at it from the other side of the coin, and the ones that maybe aren't that great and they're all about just celebrity. They're about having that fame and that adoration from millions of people, and maybe their art's not that great, because I think that they're two sides of the same coin in a way, but it's always interesting to me, people that I really admire, and they all kind of have that attitude where they're shy, they're camera shy. They don't really like discussing a lot of they don't like discussing their fame, and they try to, they might come off as assholes sometimes because they're avoiding people, and they can be they can seem rude a little bit in interviews, but think about how many people try to get them for interviews, and they're constantly, they can't walk outside without being recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely has to suck.
Yeah, I mean, some people would probably love that and eat it up, but that would be a nightmare for me. That'd be a waking hell. And I think another thing, like, why a lot of them maybe don't like to talk about their pieces and stuff are the ones who are doing it just for fame and for the adoration of the masses and money or whatever. The motivation is somewhat shallow, and it's easy for them to talk about their work. But the people who we admire that are like kind of hermit recluse types in the interviews and stuff, their work is a lot more personal, and maybe they just don't feel comfortable sharing it with some inquisitive asshole
he's looking for like the interview might be 10 minutes and they're looking for a soundbite, or just some quick little
headline or something.
some quick little explanation for something that probably would take hours to really discuss in its entirety, and really understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting topic in and of itself. Kind of the cult of celebrity.
I think if we want to bring up some names, I think Maynard from Tool is probably the epitome of that. And like, he doesn't even want to discuss old Tool music.
Yeah.
He wants to discuss what he's working on now, and I think people should respect that and stop quizzing him on a when's the next Tool album coming out, or talk about some song from 12 years ago or something, when he's been there and he's moved on from that.
Yeah.
And
well, I think a lot of his music with Tool is just that. His lyrics and stuff are a tool to work through the shit that's happening in his life, the stuff that he's not happy about. That's why a lot of his music kind of comes off as violent or with negative energy. I think it's just a catharsis process for him to work through that.
Yeah.
And when it's over and done with, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore, because it's kind of a healing process for him.
I remember seeing an interview with him a long time ago, though, and he was saying that he was like, through my shouting and screaming in my music, and all that passion that I brought to those songs, if it doesn't help me heal 10 years down the road, then what good was it?
Yeah.
So of course his music's going to change and evolve over time, because he's at a different point in his life. And his music, the Tool, it achieved its goal. It helped him through a certain period of his life, and brought him to the next stage, the next path, the next fork in the road. And I think that's kind of the goal, again, of all art, and I think we've kind of touched on this several times now, but that's kind of the whole point of art in the first place, and it's a reflection on life, and it's there to help you move on to the next chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very poignant. Yeah, I just kind of find it laughable a little bit that such a large part of our society is so obsessed with celebrity and all these dysfunctional
Yeah.
personalities. It's like they're all role models, but and I'm speaking generally because there are a lot of good people in celebrity, but I would say on the whole, a lot of them aren't people to be modeling your lives after.
Yeah, as a group, as a group on the whole, definitely. An interesting side note to that. I remember hearing a story, and I really don't remember where I heard this. And even if I did, I wouldn't mention any names. But someone had, I think, met somebody famous. Just they were out someplace, out in public, and just happened to run into somebody that was a pretty famous person in the movies. I think it was a movie star, and they didn't know the person's name. They recognized the face and knew that they were a famous person, that they were a big celebrity, but they didn't even know their real name. They didn't even know the name, and they were all excited that they had met this celebrity, this famous person, and that was just extremely ironic to me. Well, you don't even know their name. It's like they just were excited by that brush with fame. It wasn't even the person themselves that like I admire this person and it was a cool experience to meet them in person. It wasn't that at all. It was that oh my God, I had a brush with fame. Yeah. It was just that energy of this person is known by millions and I met them. It has nothing to do with their art or their work or anything. It's just that air of celebrity that really captivated them, and I think that's kind of pitiful. It's funny, but
yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting point there. Like somebody being so excited about just meeting a celebrity but not knowing anything about their work or having any personal connection to any of their works. They're just drunk off of that celebrity air.
Yeah. Sucking at the celebrity teat.
Mm-hmm. It's just kind of fascinating to me, the obsessions of modern society. We have the obsession with celebrity. We have the obsession with the news. A lot of unhealthy obsessions. I think the obsession with the news is pretty unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Something we could probably talk about for a bit.
Yeah.
I can tell you every night, like my family will turn on the news and I'll be like, oh well, why watch it? I can tell you what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
Somebody murdered their kid, or some drug deal gone bad and somebody ended up dead. There was a shooting somewhere. A bunch more military presence in the world. Yeah. The economy's fucked.
Yeah, there was probably a scandal.
Yeah.
Some teacher, political, or some cop got busted picking up a hooker. Yeah, and it's, that's not... Your nightly news is not an accurate reflection on reality. On several different levels, I think it's kind of maybe inaccurate's the wrong word because they are true stories, but it's such a small scope of the entire picture.
It's not an accurate representation of the global news.
Yeah.
What's happening in the world.
And we all know what's on the nightly news. We know what's on King 5 News every night. What interests me is kind of trying to figure out why that's the case. What's the point? What's the goal of presenting the certain news items and these patterns in the news that they routinely present night after night, week after week. I think that it's probably a combination of ratings. People have this fascination with grim happenings, kind of, and maybe part of that is that it makes their lives feel more comfortable. Like, well, at least I have it better off than these people on the news. That their lives are a complete mess.
Yeah.
And all this, all these crazy things are happening in the world. These murders and rapes and killings and scandals and threats that are threats from all these third world countries, and it's like drumming up a kind of a fear, keeping the public kind of afraid.
Yeah, scare tactics. That's kind of where I thought you were going with it. Drumming up ratings, and it's a political tool to justify some of the shady laws that are being passed and some of the shady dealings that our government is involved in. Kind of justifies it in a way. And the part you were saying, like, people's kind of twisted fascination with horrific things going on in the world. Again, back to Tool, they have a great song about this, Vicarious. First track off 10,000 Days. It's just like so great. When I first heard that song, I knew that's what the analogy was about the news and just mainstream television in general.
Yeah. How's it go? Like, I live while the whole world dies. You all feel the same, don't lie. And then the line that I really thought was interesting was, oh geez, how does it go? It's like, something about from a safe distance.
Yeah, I need to watch things die from a good safe distance. Vicariously I live while the whole world dies. You all feel the same, don't lie. So why can't we just admit it? Why can't we just admit it? We won't give pause until the blood is flowing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that perfectly sums it up. People's desire to live vicariously through these other figures. And if we're talking about that, that also ties back into the last thing we're talking about with the worship of celebrity, the cult of celebrity. A lot of that is people wanting to live vicariously. They want to have this, they see people with this lavish lifestyle on TV, especially like a reality show type shit. Just living the high life, without a care in the world, and all this
Jersey Shore, keeping up with the Kardashians, stuff like that.
Exactly. This materialistic, hedonistic paradise that they appear to live in. And, people, I think it's escapism for them to watch that shit and live vicariously through these personalities, through the Kardashians. And it's not, that in and of itself is not the problem with society, but it's a symptom of something wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't go so far to be so big-headed as to say that's what's wrong with our society and stuff. I mean, I get the fascination with it. It's just I think it's necessary to ask ourselves when we're watching stuff like that. One of my guilty pleasures is investigation discovery, watching murder mystery shows, real life stuff. But
I know.
It's like asking myself, what do I really get out of this? And I don't know. I really don't know what I get out of that, or what anybody gets out of this fascination with a lot of stuff on mainstream TV. It's just it's important to ask the questions, even if we don't have the answers.
Yeah, definitely.
Something I think it's interesting to talk about is mainstream versus alternative news. And we kind of touched on like the quest for ratings and the overall, I guess, mission statement of mainstream news is keeping ratings up, people in front of their TV sets watching the news, and possibly some political motivations there. And alternative news is there primarily, I feel like, to inform the public. Like, okay, for instance, you hear all this terrible stuff about Monsanto and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that on mainstream news at all. Now, why is that?
Not a peep.
It's pretty important, if you ask me, especially in light of the studies that show how damaging and harmful some of these growth hormones in our food can be. And that's just a small example. There's so much stuff in alternative news that is, for one reason or another, completely ignored by the mainstream media.
Well, yeah, and a lot of alternative news, they give you the flip side of the story. They give you the perspective again, and this is stuff we've talked about, but they give you the perspective of people in other parts of the world that are dealing with the repercussions of actions that maybe our government and people of positions of power in this country, things that they do and actions that they take, they have a long trickle-down effect on a lot of people in a lot of different areas on the planet. And seeing, it's not so comfortable sometimes to see what those repercussions are and the effects that they take on people. And I think if we're looking for why isn't that on mainstream news, there's every single television network and news outlet, mainstream newspapers, internet news, the established ones, they're in most media, it's all owned by the same people. I think there's like 5 or 6 corporations that own all of the hundreds of different television entities, and it might seem like they're all separate and that we're getting a diverse selection to choose from, when we're really not, because they're all
in the same pocket.
Yeah,
basically.
they are. They're owned by just a handful of corporations, own thousands of different media outlets. And I think we could even take it a step further and look at who owns those handful of corporations. I think that probably international banks own those corporations. I think it's a pyramid kind of structure, and it's all really coming from the same place. They all have the same agenda that they're pumping out to the public. So I think it's you really have to do your due diligence and search for an alternative source of news if you really want to get an accurate representation of events in the world.
It's it's like basically modern monopolies that own everything, pretty much. Look at I saw, can't remember, I wish I could refer people to the diagram that I saw, but I saw this and it's not just broadcasting companies, it's food, basically all the big companies out there are all owned essentially by the same handful, literally 4 or so corporations, and that's dangerous,
Yeah.
there's a reason that monopolies are outlawed, but they're still there.
Technically, they're outlawed.
Yeah, exactly. They're still there. It's just under a different guise now. There's that another thing that you didn't hear anything about in mainstream news until that Snowden guy, Edward Snowden or whatever. He was the contractor working with the CIA and the NSA about building up all this stuff to monitor American phone calls and
text messages and emails and all that crap.
yeah, an invasion of privacy stuff. And it's on the news now because that guy came out and
He exposed what was going on.
Exactly. And that's a true hero right there.
Yeah.
That guy's gonna suffer dearly. He's gonna pay for doing that, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, his life, for all intents and purposes, is probably over.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to have his freedom anymore.
He's gonna be sent to G-Bay or
some undisclosed
killed.
Location.
Yeah.
And you know, it's sad that people like that need to be vilified, and he's the villain now. That's the angle that the mainstream news is trying to play on it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy leaked sensitive information that's a risk to everybody.
He's a freedom fighter.
Yeah, he is, and it's not the case that he's a villain at all. And this is probably, we're putting ourselves out there to even suggest this, but those types of people are the heroes. They're not the people that
I would shake his hand and thank him profusely.
Yeah, and it's like not necessarily something that we didn't assume was going on anyway.
Yeah.
But just to have the factual information on that, like, it's just really interesting, and why there needs to be so much secrecy. Like, whenever there's secrecy about something, more often than not, it's because there's nefarious things going on behind closed doors.
I think it's interesting that, I don't know, I think it's dangerous to think about our government thinking they need to know more about us. We need to know more about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Is how it really should be. It's the opposite. And let's be real, no bones about it. They are doing all kinds of shady stuff, and a lot of it is under the radar and couldn't be met with any opposition because they pass these bills before anybody even really knows what's in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would venture to say a lot of them are just straight up done without going through the proper channels of passing certain bills and stuff. They're just...
Well, some of the bills are 1,000 pages long in lengthy legal language, and the senators and congressmen don't read that shit. They don't. There's no way. Literally, there's not enough time.
And who knows what's sandwiched in there, and like in between the 1,000-page documents, you know?
Yeah.
What's hiding, lurking in there that nobody took the time to read before they passed it into law. That's just dangerous.
But they're getting fat payouts, and they're still living their comfortable lifestyle as in these positions of power. And
of course. I mean, we talk about it all the time, apathy. That plays a huge role in it. But also, when the apathy goes away, what do we do? That question remains. It's, how do we mobilize and make change?
I think that personally, it's a lost cause for a lot of people that are running the country now, and that the real key to this is just goes back into the way children are being raised. And so when they get older, being people our age in their 20s, as we get older and we assume these more prominent positions, that we're just going to do things differently, that we're people of more substance, and we just choose not to operate that way anymore. It's the most natural way that things can progress without there being a violent conflict or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's not by any means something I'm advocating. I don't want violent revolution, because I feel like the same old, tired, played out systems would take the place of whatever we have now if there was a violent overthrow.
Yeah, you can't fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
Or else nothing changes, nothing gets accomplished. Yeah,
it's a multifaceted issue. It's It's going to be interesting to watch how it plays out. I would hope that you are right and people with actual substance and conviction and with a sense of service to their fellow man start taking office. And maybe it's the cynical side of me. I just don't know if that's going to happen. It's a lot of it lies on the shoulders of the people who put these other people in office. And granted, we're all told lies, and not everybody's entirely at fault. But I don't know. It's a tough issue.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that's not going to happen overnight. It's something that's going to take years and generations. But again, I think we are on the right track slowly, but things are getting better. Things are getting more open-minded, and it's really kind of just a race between the scary technology that's out there right now. The current regimes in power have access to. It's getting that change, that individual change in the mindsets of people to catch up to that technology, because the risk is that this overwhelming and advanced technology and the infrastructure that's in place now will allow the people, the small people that rule things now, kind of to maintain it indefinitely. So it's coming to that point of critical mass sometime in the near future, probably. And it really comes down to an individual basis for people to change, and hopefully that'll be enough. That'll be evolution taking place, the evolution of ideas, and it'll kind of just have kind of a natural progression without there having to be any sort of conflict between people right now with the people that are in positions of power. Hopefully there doesn't have to be something that's going to supplant them right now. Hopefully that just kind of dies off, and kind of the next wave kind of takes its place. Mm-hmm. That's the ideal situation, I think.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to the responsibility lying on the people who elect these officials into their seats of power.
Yeah.
To elect responsible people. And it's tough when we are told lies. Everybody tells you what you want to hear when they're campaigning and stuff. But I don't know, just an example, like the apathy. This last election, I was so apathetic towards the whole political process, and how the presidents essentially are puppets now. They're not acting of their own accord. They're pretty much, their policies are planned out for them, essentially. Yeah. And I don't think what I did last time, not voting in protest, first off, nobody noticed that. Nobody missed my vote.
Yeah.
And secondly, that's not the right thing. Like, we need to be active in the politics and stuff if there is to be change.
Putting forward people that will bring about that change.
Mm-hmm.
And not be compromised when they get into office. And that's just the big scary thing to me, really, is about the political system. It's not really the state that it's in right now. It's just the almost inability for normal people to rise up and to get into positions of leadership, because there's such a, it's like you have to make your way into that kind of community first, and you have to, it's so much of it comes down to money and campaign funding and everything, that by the time that, before they even take the oath of office, they've already been compromised, and they're in debt to people that put them there.
Yeah.
And it's not you and me. It's not junk you public that put them there. It's it's the deep pockets of whatever entity it is that's funding that.
The lobbyists and the people who contribute to their campaign funding and all that. Yeah, it's a cutthroat enterprise, and you don't rise to the top without, making your share of enemies and alliances behind the scenes. So that probably has to change too. And yeah, it's scary to think about the corporations essentially owning the government. If that was done away with, I think our political system could work quite well. But that's just not the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it just comes down to, I'm kind of holding out that that evolution runs its course, and over as years go by, that'll naturally change.
Yeah.
And I guess it remains to be seen. I guess we'll find out one way or the other.
Yep. The world's a stage, and we're all merely players.
To quote a great song.
Well, I think something interesting we could talk about for a bit here is we were talking about pharmaceutical treatments versus natural treatments earlier.
Yeah.
How about socially encouraged or accepted drugs? We didn't really touch on that. For example, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we just kind of touched on kind of pharmaceuticals, but not so much these real prominent socially encouraged drugs. And the way I always thought about it is the way that the socially encouraged drugs like caffeine and alcohol, they're there for a reason. I don't want to be too much of a hypocrite because I do consume both.
Yeah.
But
that's not the point. It's the why those are encouraged is what we're talking about here.
And I think that it's because those are the drugs that make the best worker bee. That make you the most complacent to fit into the system as it is right now. Think about getting up in the morning. Caffeine gets a lot of people out of bed in the morning. They look forward to that coffee, that triple shot of whatever they're getting, at Starbucks or whatever, and that's going to give them that brief boost of energy to get in there to their job. And coffee's been encouraged in every workplace I've ever been at. People are just guzzling coffee like there's no tomorrow, just riding high on that caffeine boost throughout the day. And that, it gives them that kind of it's not a huge boost of energy, but it's like the perfect amount, I guess, to just kind of focus in and get what you need to get done.
Well, yeah, and it's a substantial boost of energy. It's just that the effect gets minimized as people drink it day after day after day.
It's a motivator for people to get to work, and that helps them get out of bed, and get to their jobs. It's a conduit for that, for getting to your to your proverbial coal mine and mine away. And of course, when you get off work, a lot of people, especially around here, like blue collar type jobs, things where you're going to be breaking your back all day. What do they look forward to when the clock starts winding down? They look forward to that drink when they're going to get home. Yeah. And what's the alcohol do? The alcohol relaxes them when they get off work. They can kind of zone out and not think about anything, because alcohol doesn't provoke thought. It kind of just it diminishes it. It kind of numbs the world a little bit. And you have a few drinks at night, and that helps you deal with the day that you've had, and makes you less worried about the shitty day that tomorrow's gonna be. And you go to bed, and it's rinse, wash, and repeat, and same thing tomorrow. And it's a cycle that I think most of society is subject to right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a huge motivation just to get through the workday so they can get home and have that drink. And I'm talking a lot about just mostly people who lean on alcohol as a crutch, but a lot of them keep their jobs so they can pay for that habit of boozing when they're off, you know?
Yeah.
Or whatever bills they have too, that ties into it as well. But
They're just perpetuating that little that little life that they have.
Exactly.
And they don't even enjoy it. I think if you ask most people, they're not happy with their current situation.
No, if they're honest with themselves. I mean, a lot of people, just to keep up the social appearance, it's not okay to talk about how unhappy we are socially.
But the idea of losing that is just as grim.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to lose it, even though they're not happy with it. And I think that's just, that there is the definition of irony.
Well, and like, we could talk about nicotine for a minute too. It does, cigarettes are bad for you. I'll say that. But there is some positive qualities to the drug of nicotine. One of the, hundreds of chemicals you find in your cigarettes that are bought here in America. But it also kind of plays in with the coffee thing. It makes people good worker bees.
Gets you through the day.
Yeah, looking forward to that next cigarette break, and gotta hammer this out before my next cigarette break or whatever. And it keeps them productive throughout the day. And also, cigarettes kill a lot of people, but most of the jobs here in this nation, in this day and age, they're easily replaceable cogs. Yeah. So if somebody dies from cigarette smoking, so be it. They're just gonna plug someone else into that.
Yeah, they want to get like a good 20 years out of somebody, and then, that's that.
Yeah, it's just interesting to contemplate that whole subject of not only what drugs are socially encouraged, but why.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, you really hit it on the head there. It's just makes a good worker bee.
Yeah, and that's what's desired of the average person. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, not to keep rehashing things we've talked about, and that is not just completely the fault of the powers that be. It's also sad when the worker bees themselves, the average people, us, look down upon others that kind of see that illusion and try to sidestep it and take a more original path to the life that they want to have. Like, whoever set this whole system up, it's working good because
they covered all their bases pretty well.
It's set in place, and the worker bees themselves will turn on people that don't assume that status.
Yeah. Well, and it goes to our own detriment sometimes too when we say we have a project we want to work on, and this stuff is all pretty rudimentary, like the podcasts and experiments in thought and whatever.
Yeah.
But like our bigger projects, the proverbial aces in the hole, like
that we will not discuss here.
Yeah, we're not going to go into that, but it plays into somewhat preventing us from attaining that goal when we're drinking beers and smoking cigarettes. And
we're a victim to it as well.
Yeah.
And willing victims. So, yeah, again, we're not trying to say that we're not hypocrites, because we definitely are to an extent, but we recognize it.
We don't do any false advertising.
Yeah, no false advertising here.
It's something I want to hear you talk about for a little bit. And I might be able to chime in a little bit, but I think you're more well-versed in the subject than I am. Simulation theory. Something I'm very fascinated with. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. Like, this is why I like doing the podcast with you, and why we're such good friends, I feel like, is we talk about just trippy shit like this on the regular. So, why don't you just kind of explain a little bit about simulation theory?
So first of all, it's something that I've read in kind of like obscure like science internet sites and stuff years, and then more recently, some of the podcasts of people that have kind of influenced the idea for us to even do this podcast. They've been discussing it quite a bit recently, and it's kind of getting more out there now. But what simulation theory is the idea that perhaps all of this existence that we know, our lives in reality, and our very universe that we inhabit, might be something more akin to a computer simulation than I guess nature in its raw form. And there are surprisingly enough, there are scientific studies now being done, especially like on the quantum level, that are kind of suggesting that maybe this is the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I think computer simulation is again, it's a human concept that we're applying to it, and it's something that we can't really fully understand. Maybe it is God's design.
Yeah.
Who knows? But the fact is that some scientists are finding and this is way above my level. I'm no physicist. I'm not smart enough to really understand it. I can just kind of be the messenger here. They're finding in their physics research, they're finding what appear to be computer codes in like the equations that they're using to describe reality and nature and quantum physics and the universe. And not only do they appear to be computer codes, they're like certain kinds of computer codes. Like we've seen this in like the highest levels of computer engineering.
Yeah, like the real cutting edge of software and hardware engineering.
Yeah, like what we, just the methods that we use to create our simulations, they're finding those like basically written to the fabric of the universe.
Yeah.
And the implications of that are so vast that it's hard to talk about. It's really hard to talk about. But it's a very real possibility now that we can recognize that we are in some manner a simulation rather than completely, I don't even know what the opposite term would be, natural.
Yeah, or like maybe it's not essentially a simulation, so to speak, but like a hologram of a simulation, like a very parallel existence to a simulation. Look at computer games, video games right now.
Mm-hmm.
They run on physics engines and have like certain laws implemented into the programming parameters that they lay out. And those parameters in our real world, in the universe, would be the laws of physics and science that we have observed. It's just really interesting to think about. Like, I don't know, but what's even more interesting, and we've talked about this before, I don't want to keep rehashing and beating a dead horse, but it's really interesting when we get down to the subatomic level and find that those codes and laws are routinely fudged and broken and bypassed.
And even the fact that we have laws of physics and laws of nature, that there are true rules to the way reality operates, doesn't that kind of beg the question of, well, someone or something had to lay these laws in place rather than there being no laws to nature?
Yeah, and maybe it was, God. And it's just like his super elaborate version of a simulation. Or maybe it is all just run on a computer somewhere. I don't know. But it begs the question of what the hell is going on. It's just interesting to think about.
And we have no idea.
No.
No idea.
It's just trippy to muse on it and kind of run around in circles, and I don't know. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy. It's, I'd liken it to an ant that is trying to understand trying to understand geopolitics or something that's just far beyond their grasp.
Yeah.
To even fathom And that's essentially what we are. We're a lot further to an ant than we are to God.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
As much as people, the tendency is to flatter themselves and think that we know everything and have it all figured out. We don't.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a finite understanding at this point in our evolution. And maybe that's the destiny of the human race, is to achieve a status of the programmer, of God, to be masters of the universe, so to speak, to have that apotheosis.
You know what's interesting too? I think this was a quote from the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast.
Big influence on us.
Yes, that goes without saying. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. DuncanTrussell.com.
Yeah, and you'll find a lot of stuff we're talking about put probably a lot more eloquently than we do.
Yeah, but they were talking about simulation theory. They had basically a whole episode devoted to it, and he said it's interesting to look back at Genesis and replace God with like the programmer or whatever.
I thought that was great. The programmer said, "Let there be light."
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference between all the other names that we've conjured up for God throughout all the religions and spiritual teachings of the world?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just as compelling, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, and again, it's time to put our dogma aside and allow truth to be our one religion.
Yep.
You know, always seek out truth rather than what's most comfortable to you or what you've been, the mindset you've been raised in. And I'll quote Doug Stanhope again here. He says, that's dead people's baggage. Quit carrying it.
Collective conscious strikes again, man. I was just sitting here thinking about one of my favorite quotes of Christ, one of the ultimate truth speakers throughout the history of mankind.
Yeah.
He said it's important to seek the truth. I'm of the opinion that it's not so much important that where you're seeking out these answers, just that you are seeking.
Yeah.
And it brings me to one of my favorite passages that he ever spoke. Seek and you will find. Ask and it will be given to you. Knock and the door will be open. For he who seeks shall find, etc. and so forth. But I was just thinking that right as you said, seek the truth, and it just like kind of blew my mind.
Well, it's a fundamental, man. Fundamental of life, and shit, I forgot what I was gonna say. There's something else about Christ that I wanted to bring up. Damn it. The thought has flown away. Maybe I'll get it back in a second.
I hate that. I liken Christ to, like, if this is a simulation, if this is like God's RPG game that he made for fun or something to just do in his off time, which is kind of a funny concept in and of itself, God having free time. But say planet Earth is like some elaborate RPG universe. Christ is the level 100 character who comes down to just
all of us level 2s.
Yeah.
Trying to make it in the world.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say, though, about how we need to put aside our dogma. Weren't there people in the Bible called the Pharisees, and didn't Christ come into some sort of conflict with them?
Yeah.
And their Pharisaical principles and their traditions that they were upholding, and rejected Christ and all of his teachings because it went against their comfortable tradition that they had been raised in.
Their interpretation.
Their interpretation, which granted them their positions of influence over other people.
Yeah.
Isn't that the same exact thing that's going on today with this rigid upholding of dogmatic beliefs and refusal to open your mind and ask questions? It's Pharisaical.
Yeah.
Through and through.
And I liken spiritual growth to, again, another river analogy. You're in a canoe and you're rowing upstream because spiritual growth is no easy task.
Yeah.
So you're rowing against the current. And to stop and be like, oh, I've got it all, I've got it right, this church or my way, my current understanding is the right way, to stop rowing is to go backwards.
Exactly.
You've got to constantly be reevaluating your place in the bigger picture, constantly reevaluating your path and what it all means. And I think that's one of the main things that Christ taught was he wasn't big on tradition and all that stuff.
He shattered traditions.
Yeah, paradigms and traditions and all that. He came along and, mind you, it just speaks volumes that his words are still pertinent today.
Mm-hmm.
But back then they were ever more groundbreaking and shattering. We were much more barbaric. I mean, we still are pretty barbaric, but much more so back in that time.
On an individual basis, back then it was out of control.
Yeah, and the stuff that he came along saying, the message of love and all that stuff, it was just like...
Oh, he was just trashing their scene, wasn't he?
Yeah, in a very big way. Props to Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, despite kind of the wider realization of existence that I've wandered into, Jesus Christ is still my number one go-to guy for wisdom and spiritual guidance. And
provided the interpretation is correct.
Exactly. And we don't, I would say that we don't need a fucking interpretation. It's laid out for us.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need a middleman between me and Christ to tell me what he was saying. It's clear and evident to me, and any rational, open-minded person, I think it's pretty clear.
Well, yeah, and Sermon on the Mount goes at great length, just illustrating that exact sentiment, and just, oh man, read Sermon on the Mount, please. Coming up on the end here.
Yep, I think we're about out of time.
Well, I would like, for closing thoughts, just to thank you, the listener.
If you made it this far.
Yeah, if they made it this far, which is kind of gratuitous, but we'd probably still do this regardless, but it makes it more rewarding when we know that
there is some audience out there.
All 5 of you, or however many there are. Yeah. Thanks for your support and listening. We want to hear from you. We want to feature you. So, we're still doing it, just us two. We need to get more of you in on it. Yeah,
I don't know what a feasible goal is, but I'd like to at least get like a lineup of 20 or so people that we could perpetuate this thing for a while. So get a hold of us. Yeah, and there's no sign-up sheet or any hoops to jump through. If you want to appear, that's all it takes. Yep. We'll figure it out and we'll do it. All right. Well, anything else? I guess that about sums it up. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.